Ajnanajnanasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. What a joy to be with you all again. Ready to go? Yesterday, I think we had a couple questions that we didn't get to at the end. I don't know if I've learned your name yet or if I've forgotten. Could you? Yes.
Katie.
I'm sorry, Katie.
Yeah.
Katie. Yes, Katie. Did you have a question to bring up this morning?
It was just asking about the sort of balance of manas and buddhi.
Yes.
And obviously, if manas is dominant to start with, and then we're cultivating buddhi, it's a sort of shift in ratios of,
yes.
of one becoming sort of more dominant over time.
Okay, this is a good question. In other words, we discussed yesterday, so we'll get right into it. Yesterday we discussed, well, let me just come back a couple steps and then we'll take your question. Really what we're talking about is freedom. Are we free? Right? We assume that we're free. I remember, I share this sometimes. I grew up in a small town that was right on the edge of New York City. So all the men in the town worked in the city and they would get on the train. And I lived like just one block from the train station. And so, as you're growing up, you do what you're told. You go to school and, you study but you hit a certain age where you're like, now I make decisions for myself. Now I'm going to be free. I'm going to decide what I'm going to do. And for me, that age, when it really fully manifested was like 15 years old, which felt like mature then. And now I look back and I say, my God, I look at a 15-year-old and I say, the world that I was walking into at that age, I can't believe I was doing it. But I was, at 15 years old, I got into punk rock music. And in America at that time, it was like very kind of an underground thing. Not many people knew about it. And I could just get on that train. Again, it was just a block from my house. I could go down into the city. I'd be there just half an hour. And I would step out onto the sidewalks. And I felt so free. I felt like everything's wide open to me now. The city at that time was kind of dangerous, but kind of like, but free. It felt very free. There were no rules. As a 15-year-old, I could go into bars in New York City, at least in certain neighborhoods, when I think the drinking age was 21, because just nobody cared. And there was, there's drugs, there's music, there was girls, there was just like all this, art, different kind of things going on. And I was just like, the world was opening up to me. And honestly, sometimes when I go through Grand Central Station, which is the first station I step out into, I can taste that same taste that I had as a 15-year-old. You ever have that kind of thing? It's like, it's very subtle, but it's subtle, but it's visceral too. You can really taste like that feeling. You feel it. To me, it was freedom. But as a yogi, I look back at that time and I say, actually, he wasn't free at all. He was just following programming in the mind that registered as freedom, that registered as fun, that registered as exciting. But really, all of that had been kind of dictated to me by the music I was listening to, by the television I've been watching, and the movies that I've seen, and so on. There was a programming in my mind that said that's where excitement is, that's where happiness is, that's where a fulfilling life lies in this world. But I could have been fed other information. If I would have been raised in a different setting and exposed to different things, I would have had a completely other idea about what excitement is. And in pursuing that, I would have felt free. But it's kind of, sometimes the yogis use this example of, have you ever seen a bull and it has a ring in the nose? You can put a ring right in the nose of a bull. Bull is a powerful creature, really powerful. But if it's got a ring in its nose, then a little child can just go, can pull it, and it's just got to follow along. Little child can control this big, powerful beast, you know. And so the yogis are saying we're like that. We think that we're free, but actually we got a ring in our nose, and it's pulling us around. And that's this programming in the mind that has us convinced that we need this to be happy. When we get it, we will be happy. And also false ideas about who we are, right? I am this, I am that, right? As long as we don't know who we are, as long as we're convinced that we need external things to be happy, particular external things to be happy, and other external things will bring us distress, as long as we're convinced of that false information, we're like a bull with a ring in the nose. Our power, we're unable to express it. We're not free to express the power of the self, our eternality, our knowledge, our bliss that's inherent, that's part of the soul. We can't even engage it. So how can we say that we're free? We're actually bound, right? Bound like a bull with a ring in its nose. So in order to understand this, to really understand how this mind is working, the yogis have shown us that there are basically three, if the mind is a computer, there are three applications within the mind that are receiving information, processing information, interfacing with one another, encoding that information and storing it in the hard drive of our subconscious mind. And if we can look at this, we can begin to gain control of it. If we don't understand it at all, we're just going to be stuck following the program, the automatic programming that's going in. But if we can really understand it, it gives us the chance, it gives us the opportunity to say, I understand how the computer works, now I'm going to take control. Does that make sense? Does that resonate with everyone? We can do this, right? We can do this. So we talked about three applications in the mind. One is called the manas, which means, I call it the impulsive aspect of the mind. It has automatic triggered responses to whatever comes in through the senses. I like it, I don't like it, right? It's programmed, it's immediate. There's no reflection, there's no weighing of pros and cons. It just responds, right? And the crazy thing is that part of the mind also makes all our decisions. Because in the end, we make a decision based on what we think will bring happiness. Right? And then there's another part of the mind called the ahankara, another application working in the mind, right? Aham means I, kara means, you could say, maker, the I maker. It's what determines how we conceive of our own identity, right? And that has everything to do with how we feel about ourselves, what we think we are, who we think we are. There's an application that's processing information, taking in all the things we've ever heard about ourselves, all the things we've ever observed about ourselves within the framework of the world that we're moving through. And it processes that information and gives us an idea, a false idea, about who we are. Right? You are a man, American, New Yorker, 60-year-old, this, that, these are like all, it's telling us all these things. Also, you're sophisticated, or you're down to earth, or you're, all of these ideas about who I am. This application is processing that information, taking that information and then interfacing with the other applications in your computer with that sense of identity, that false sense of identity. And then the third application is a very fascinating one, and now we'll get to your question, Katie. And it's called the buddhi. This is the reasoning faculty within the mind. We can call it the intellect, the intelligence. This is what weighs pros and cons. This is where discernment lies. This is where reflection lies. The buddhi can look at the manas and see its programming, but it can weigh pros and cons. You think this will make you happy? Consider it more carefully, right? And so there's these three are interfacing with one another. And Katie's question was, is it that there's like an ideal balance, like we should be driven this much by the buddhi and a certain percentage by the manas? Is that essentially your question?
But maybe early on there's a predominance of manas.
I'm sorry, again?
But early on there's maybe a predominance of manas, and then over time with practice we cultivate greater discretion.
Yeah. So it's like this. What we want to do, what the yogi wants to do, is he wants to program all three very well, right? But the buddhi, the intellect, will be essential in carrying that out. We're using this computer analogy. The yogis in the Upanishads used another analogy because computer technology wasn't around at that time, I suppose. They used this example of, they said the body is like a chariot. Have any of you heard this before? Right? The body is like a chariot. And the horses pulling the chariot are the senses. Right? The senses. Do our senses not pull us around? Right? They drag us over here, they drag us over there. That's why I thought I was free, but my senses were just like pulling me, all over the place. So the senses are the horses. The reins connected to the horses that are used to control the horses, that's the manas. It's the manas, the impulsive mind, that is it's the application that directly interfaces with the senses, right? Directly interfaces with the senses. And the driver is the buddhi, the intellect. And the passenger? The atma, the self, right? So we're sitting in a chariot of a body. We have senses that are trying to pull us all over the place. We have a manas that's directly interfacing with them. And then we have a driver that's our intellect. And we're going for a ride. Now the yogis are saying this, is that this intellect, if it's strong, if the driver is strong, he can get a hold of the reins, get control of the reins, tighten the reins, and control the horses. And then we can direct exactly where we're going. We'll be free to determine the path that we take. If not, the horses will determine it on their own, and they'll run wild, right? And we'll go for a rough ride, and we don't know where we're going to end up, right? So if the intellect is strong, now what does it mean to have a strong intellect? For a yogi, it means especially this shravana, hearing, right? And by hearing also means like basically this book is just sound in an external form, but you read it and you recreate the sound. And so the sound, the knowledge as it's handed down by sound, is the key to strengthening that intellect, to building it, to making it well informed, and strengthening it, right? We can strengthen that intellect. So it's not that one, in the end, the manas makes the decision, but the buddhi can help adjust its programming. It can help it understand where happiness actually lies, right? I used this example yesterday. The alarm goes off in the morning, and the manas is like, happiness is here in the bed, right? It's interfacing with the senses, and the senses are giving strong signals that happiness is right here. It's soft, it's warm, it's comfortable. Getting out of this bed is going to be cold and uncomfortable. You'll have to pass through this very uncomfortable time period. But the buddhi is saying, no. Think about it carefully. If you don't get out of bed now, granted, getting out of bed now, you'll endure some suffering. But think about the suffering that you'll endure when you lose your job and you have no money and you won't even have this bed anymore, right? You'll suffer far more. So happiness lies in getting out of bed. And then the manas says, I want happiness. Happiness lies in getting out of the bed. And then it gets out of the bed, right? Unless we make a phone call and call in sick. That's when the manas wins out, right? But you can only do that so many times. Does that make sense? So all three, we want to know who we are. We want to know what we actually do and do not need to be happy. And we want an intellect that's powerful enough to help us get all of that straight and all of that clear. That makes sense? Okay, so we want to purify them all the senses and all the different facets of the mind should be purified by the knowledge. They should be purified by jnana, by atma jnana, by knowing who we are. And if that rises up strong, it'll purify the entire thing. Does that make sense? Yes.
Where is the false ego in the analogy of the chariot?
Somehow it's not there. Yeah, it's a very important one, but somehow it's not there. It's Katha Upanishad, and I believe it appears in other Upanishads as well, but we don't, for some reason, it's not included there. As far as I know, I haven't seen it included in that particular analogy. Yeah, but it's still a really important thing to know about. This ahankara, think about it, right? Think about it. That within our mind there is an application that's processing information really without our even knowing about it, right? And again, think about this carefully. This is something we struggle with so much, identity, right? Particularly now, people talk about it more than ever. There's identity politics, and there's so much talk about. Many people struggle with feelings of unworthiness, very common. You hear this very commonly. Where do these ideas come from? That there is this application in the mind that's processing. You take everything that you've ever heard about yourself and everything that you've observed about yourself, and then you put that within the context of everything you've observed about your environment, and it starts to process all this information. And then it comes up with your identity, right? And sometimes that identity may feel good, sometimes it may not feel good. Someone identifies with their place of birth, right? Their country, let's say. Or maybe even like they're from the city or they're from some rural environment. And that information, when combined with everything else they've been told, may make them feel proud. It may make them feel ashamed, right? The way that's all this process, the yogis are saying, you're not from the city. You're not from the country, right? You may have been born in that area temporarily. And the life before that, you were born in another place. And the life after that, you'll be born in still another place. So you need to be able to see this. I thought I had conquered that. You need to be able to see you need to be able to zoom out, to not see from the perspective of just the right here and now, but to be able to zoom out and observe yourself within the space of time and see that this birth of yours is just a very temporary blip in really an eternal line that goes eternally both directions. Right? Then you realize that's not me. That's just a tiny little blip of a phase that I pass through. And then I pass through the next one. And then I pass through another one. And none of them are me. But you can't come to that. If you come to that conclusion, you become free. Right? Free of your feelings of unworthiness. Free of your feelings of pride. Both of which are just two sides of the same coin. I'm great, I'm horrible. It's just like, it's all false information. You're beyond it all, right? But in order to come to that conclusion, you're going to have to engage the buddhi. You're going to have to engage this intellect. So the intellect becomes so strong. I remember when I became a monk and I was being trained by the other monks, and they used to say, you learn the art of going from the intelligence, bypassing the manas, and going straight into action. You understand? Sometimes, like, how many of you like to bathe in the Ganga here? Okay. Now, when you go to bathe in the Ganga, it's cold, right? You feel so good when you come out, not just because it's like a Wim Hof kind of cold plunge experience. That's there. but also because it's Mother Ganga. This is not an ordinary river. This river can powerfully can powerfully adjust so much of that programming within you, your attachments, your false conceptions of yourself. Like, this river carries mystic potency. The yogis know this. They experience it. So when you come out of that river, you feel like a new person. You feel good. You feel very refreshed. But you have to go in. And when you go in, you put your toes in there, and immediately signals are sent, right? The mana says, too cold for comfort, too cold for happiness, right? And the intelligence has to come in and say, doesn't matter. You're better off going in, right? And they say, but no, and they say, no, but yes, and you go, and actually none of the struggle is, the yogis know none of the struggle is necessary. They learn to discipline themselves. They learn to say, in the end, it's funny. I have a yearly experience. There's a festival that I attend every year called they call it like the Flower Festival, and it's in one of my favorite temples in the world, the ISKCON Chowpatty Temple in Mumbai. And it's the most, I can't go into all the details, but it's the most mind-blowing festival you've ever seen, where it's like it's raining flowers and they're accumulating like snow. And then it's like having a snowball fight while Kirtan is going on, and it's really unbelievably beautiful experience. And so every year for about the past 15 years, I go to that, and I always, myself and my friend Raghunath, we always take large groups there, like maybe sometimes up to 80 people we take in there. And but because the temple room is only so big, you really need to be invited to get in. And a friend of mine, he's a monk and a really beautiful character, but it's his responsibility. But before he became a monk, he was like a foreman on some kind of big construction projects in Dubai and stuff. So he's like the kind of man that can control stuff, you know? He's asked to play that role. And there's always some extra people that want to come in that are turned to us and say, can you get me in? And I'm like, well, you weren't on the list, but let's see what we can do. And we always have this debate with him as we're trying to get in. And he's like saying, no, no, no. You know, someone has to be that person to say no. And I it was like last year I was saying to him, we were going back and forth for 10 minutes like this. Come on, you have to let this person in. It's not going to make any difference. It's going to be okay. And no, I can't do that. And then I finally said, Prabhu, we both know that in the end, you're going to say yes. So why are we arguing here? Let's just do this. He said, okay, go ahead. But we have to be like that with our mind, that in the end, I'm going to get in that river, no matter how cold it is. So why should I go through this suffering of, oh, it's too cold, I don't know if I can do this. You just go. The yogis learn to get, the intellect becomes stronger, right? The intellect becomes stronger. It dominates, and then it reprograms the manas. So that the manas is like, I even like the cold, right? That's fine, you know? And so the manas begins to choose its happiness being reprogrammed by the intellect. And so they all have to have that. How do we build, strengthen that intellect? It's through hearing and then reflection, right? Both of these. You hear the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, you hear the knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam, you hear the knowledge of the Upanishads. But you don't just leave it there. You reflect on it as you go through life. Especially the challenges that we go through life. They help strengthen and mature that knowledge. And as you begin to confront as the Buddhi continues to confront the false ego and say, no, you are not a man, you are not a woman, you are not an American, you are not an Indian, you're not these things. Remember it. You may be temporarily playing those roles, but that's not really you. The more that it engages in that confrontation, the more that the ahankar begins to surrender. The more that the well-informed intellect begins to confront the manas and say, don't you get it? I'm going to keep telling you this. You're never going to be happy this way until you realize who you are. And you realize that true happiness means you're not controlled by your senses. You're being dominated by the senses, and it's getting you nowhere. Happiness does not lie in the connection of the senses with the objects of the senses. It's found within. So move through this world searching out better circumstances where you can go within and feel your inner nature. And so when the manas gets programmed that way, it begins to choose happiness spontaneously in places that are favorable for our liberation. Right? I like to go to sleep early. I like to get up early. I like to open up the Bhagavad Gita and read it. I like to have a simple diet. Is there a question? Or? Yes. Where? Okay. Yes, let's go.
I just wanted to say that I think it's all about, well, we kind of leave the body out, but in my work, I feel that it's so meaningful to apply them into the experience, because the body eventually learns that, yeah, even though the water is cold, I get some good feelings because I'm doing something that my soul likes. So we're bringing them into oneness, this feeling of my body, mind, and soul are in coherence. It's such a beautiful experience. And I think it's important to understand how the mind works and how we can get around the impulse of, oh no, I won't. But then the experience of the divine comes in. And it's the most powerful thing because we experience it in the body. It's kind of the vehicle we have to use, right? We can't bypass it. It's going to be there. It's going to tell us, oh, it's cold, or I'm sick. And so I think it's a powerful teaching. And for me, in my experience, and also in the work that I do, I think people experience this bliss when they're dancing in the, it comes out as an emotional reaction, kind of. And if you can learn to bring that into this space of where you're no longer controlled by the program, but something bigger takes over, basically the soul allows the body to have this divine experience, then that's just magical to me.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And we had a question in the back, I think. Yes, sir.
As we know that our senses cannot identify Atma, and the way
I'm sorry, the senses cannot.
see the Atma,
Okay.
like eyes cannot see themselves.
Yes.
So Atma cannot see the own. So how can we experience the presence of Atma?
The Atma does not need to be seen to be experienced. It's actually the Atma that experiences. The Atma is the experiencer. It's the Atma that experiences whatever we see through the eyes. So in so many ways one could one can approach it intellectually, and the Bhagavad Gita will do that. We've been speaking about that in past classes, recognizing that even in one life I've been through many bodies. Who's experiencing the different bodies like this? So you can think of it intellectually, but the Atma is you. It's the observer. It's less the observed and more the observer. And if we think of it that way, then we'll experience our own self in that position. Okay. I wanted to use a little example about how these applications interact with one another. Are you ready for that? And I'll tell a story or two, maybe. Think about this first as we start to get into that. Whatever comes through the senses becomes processed by these three applications. And then as it's processed, it becomes encoded and then stored. And when I say it's encoded, I mean it's encoded with emotional content. We see a particular thing. It enters in, the immediate interface is with the manas, which has an immediate response. Then it's processed through the ego, which has a lot to do with how we start to feel about it and how we feel about ourselves. And then it also passes through the intellect, or the buddhi, that shares its further information about this and encodes it all. And then it's stored. It's stored within the subconscious mind. That it's sitting there like a file on the computer, stored within the subconscious. It may come up on its own. It may come up due to our effort to pull it up. We may reach down to try to pull up a memory. We may reach down to pull up a file. When that information is stored in the subconscious mind, what is it called in Sanskrit? Samskara. Samskara, right? There's an impression left in the mind, an encoded impression in the mind. It comes up and we feel a certain way. Think about this. Say you have a mother and her child, and they're walking down the street. I remember once I was walking down the street in Brooklyn, New York, and right in front of me there was a car crash. Like if I'm on the sidewalk here, it was just maybe 15 feet away. So it was really close, and it was really violent. It was how hard they hit each other. It was a bit shocking that it happened so close like that. It's scary. And imagine if something like that happens as the mother and child are walking down the street. Imagine there's a horrific car accident right in front of their eyes. There's blood, maybe even death. Right? Now, let's say this child is just like 3 years old, 4 years old. What does the mother feel compelled to do immediately after this has happened? I'm sorry? Protect the child. Well, the child, let's say that the incident is done. So the child's its safety isn't threatened by this at this stage. But
making sure that the child doesn't get an impression of what he just saw.
Yeah, they're concerned about how the child's processing it, right? Because the mother has a well-developed buddhi at this point, that she's learned so many things and observed so many things and understood so many things about life. She has all that information in her buddhi, stored in her subconscious mind. She can pull it up and process it through the intellect. She knows that this happens on occasion, that statistically it's relatively rare, that although it was very shocking that at this moment there's no danger to anyone, that this is a part of life and that life goes on. But the child may be completely rocked by this because they don't have all that background information. So they may just respond like the world is an entirely unsafe place, right? It could warp the mind in some way, warp their experience. And the mother wants to be sure that the child can place this in the proper context and not be traumatized by it. True? So what does the mother do? It's kind of like you have two computers and they're connected by a cable. And really the cable is just the mother's voice and the mother's presence. And the mother will process the information and feed it into the computer of the child, into the mind of the child, and assure the child of their own safety. Assure the child that you are safe right now. Ensure the child that although sometimes scary things happen in the world, it's okay. We can move on and live a happy life. And so then that the memory of that incident, the vision of that incident, which is stored in the memory and stored in the subconscious mind, it's now encoded with this rational information, so that when it's stored, if the child hears the phrase car accident, or sees another car, or sees a car accident on the television, they're not traumatized by that experience. They have, when it comes up encoded with that emotional, that rational information that's so important in terms of their emotional experience. Does that make sense? Everybody with me? Okay. So this is so important in terms of how we process our own information too. Without being yogis, practically everywhere in the world, every nation will have certain regulations about what's shown on television. Yes? And what are their particular concerns? Sex and violence, generally. These two especially, right? Because they leave very deep impressions in the mind. And they're very strongly connected to our emotions, right? Where does Patanjali start when he says his yama and niyama? Ahimsa, nonviolence, right? Brahmacharya, control of one's sex. Because he understands the deep impressions that these leave. If it's not controlled, it will dominate us rather than us having it under control. So these things, they connect, they make sense. We know this maybe without having the full information that the yogis have. We know it to some degree. But now let's consider this story, and this will talk about how all these applications interface. Let's say there's a man, he's walking down a city sidewalk, returning home from work, and he looks across the street, and he sees that there's a shop there with a big glass window, and inside the window, there's a cardboard cutout advertisement displayed. And that cardboard cutout advertisement is in the shape of an attractive woman in a bathing suit. Okay? Everybody with me? We see these things, do we not? And on the bathing suit is the logo of a particular brand of alcohol. Okay? We see these things too, do we not? And the woman is very attractive, and she's got a nice smile on her face, and maybe she even has a bottle of the alcohol in her hand or something like that, or she's like holding it or something. And when he sees that, right, he looks across, he sees the form, right? He sees the logo. He sees the expression on her face. And that information passes through the eyeball, is transferred immediately to the manas, right? It's the manas that is the first interfacing with the senses, and the manas responds positively. This is nice, happiness right there, right? And then it passes through the ahankara, right? And the ahankara, it has what we call, in his case, male ego programming, right? So when he sees that form, what he thinks about himself has a lot to do with his being a man, right? His being male, her being female, the nature of the male-female connection, right? If he has a positive, we call it positive, but in other words, if he has a certain confidence in his manliness, you could say, then he may see that form, and it brings up feelings like, it makes him feel he wants to be an attractive man. And when he sees that form, it has some of those feelings. When he feels that, they start to rise in him emotionally, right? So both of these, the way both the apps are working, it's like saying happiness lies over there, right? And memories start to come up. It's the image itself has triggered some samskaras to begin to rise to the surface. And those samskaras are encoded with emotion as well. So memories and feelings start to arise in him. This was all very intentionally designed by the advertising agency. They understand these connections. That's why they combined that particular form with the particular logo, so that the logo becomes associated, so that that logo will trigger these kind of pleasant samskaras to arise. And so there's memories of being free, feelings of being free, free of inhibitions, right? Dancing, happily, maybe being the life of the party, right? Those feelings are kind of like, I passed through so much mundane drudgery in life. I'm coming home from work. I just spent the last 8 hours doing stuff that I wish I didn't even have to do. It's just what I need to do in life to survive. But the real life was when I was free and dancing and free of inhibition. That alcohol makes me feel free of inhibition. And that's when things are exciting. There was romance, sexual connections. There was we forgot about all of the mundane minutia that we have to go through in life. All of that receded in our awareness when we're partying and having fun, right? We get that picture. Actually, the parties aren't so fun if we really analyze them. But we're convinced that it is, Sometimes people say, are we having fun yet? Right? We're here, we're at the party, we're drunk, and we're miserable still, But we're convinced of this. And maybe we have had some feelings that were like that. So all those feelings are rising up. I was free. I was attractive. I was uninhibited. It was exciting. It was fun. I like all of that. And he's standing on the sidewalk waiting for the light to change. And he's saying, maybe I'll go across the street, buy a bottle, get a 6-pack. And as he's waiting there, some time has to pass before he can cross the street until the light changes. And as he's waiting there, some other files from buried deep within the memory bank, deep within the subconscious mind, start to rise. And some of those thoughts are not as pleasant as the other ones, right? He may have even had to do this intentionally. It may have been that the Buddhi said, hold it. There's danger here. It looks attractive, but there is danger. Let me reach down and pull up a file. And dear Manas, I know you're about to cross the street thinking happiness lies over there. Let me reach down and share some other information so you can see if happiness actually does lie over there. Let me pull up this file when the time you made a fool of yourself when you were drunk. How embarrassing that was. I have another file right here. I'm going to pull it up right now and show it to you. Reach down into the memory bank, pull it up. Look at this one. When you were drunk and you crashed the car, right? You almost killed an innocent person. What about that? Oh, and I got another file here for you. Think about this one. And this is the conversation that your wife had with you when she said, I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. But if you can't get your drinking under control, then this marriage is just not going to work out. Right? So these visions, these memories are full of strong emotion. And now it's beginning to outweigh the positive emotion. It seemed like that bottle led to happiness, but with this new information, the Manas has recalculated, actually the bottle leads to misery. You understand? He felt some fear, right? Some embarrassment, some fear. And now he's recalculated. Now the Manas says, no, don't go that way. Keep walking. Happiness doesn't lie there. Misery lies there. Keep walking, right? So he walks by. Now, the next day, he's got to walk past the same place. He just went through he knew, I almost lost it, right? Years of sobriety, kept my life together, kept me from going over the edge. I walked past that, I saw this one image, I almost lost it. When he walks by the next day, what does he do? He doesn't even look over there, right? He knows, I don't even want to see that. I don't want to go through that again, right? So he's like just kind of, and he reflects. Remember where it leads. That's the reflection. Remember where it leads. That's not happiness. That's not happiness. That's not happiness. He walks past, and he does this for some time. Now that he's built up his conviction. I'm never going to walk over there. And as he walks down the street, it doesn't matter. He can look in or not look in. He's going to be okay. And it gets to the point where he looks over there. The first time he walked by and he saw it, he looked at the form, and what did he see? A beautiful, happy woman that's interested in him somehow, right? That's the way it kind of plays out in the mind. And now when he walks by, he looks at the exact same form, but he's seeing through the eyes of knowledge. When he sees through those eyes, when that form goes through the senses, what actually rises as his mind is advertising agency, right? He just sees right through it all. He just sees that's meant to attract me, but it really doesn't. And it keeps going. You understand? Now, when was he free? Right? When was he free? It wasn't free when you're getting drunk and dancing in the party. That wasn't free. That was bound. Free means like I am not under the control of my senses, of the advertising agency, of my ego, of my manas, my impulsive mind. I've got it all under control with the help of my buddhi, with the help of the intellect. I'm able to free myself. Now, if we don't do this, then what happens is the manas and its random programming, it corrupts the intellect. It gets the intellect working for itself. You begin to use your intellect just to pursue the desires of the manas, and now you have a completely corrupted system. Does that make sense? Right? So for the yogis, it's so important. They not only hear Bhagavad Gita, hear Upanishads, hear Srimad Bhagavatam. They not only hear it, but they hear it regularly. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Nitya means all the time, daily. It's a regular practice. This is how yoga works. It's not just that you do it on occasion, right? Yogi Charu was teaching asana here today. How many of you practice asana? Raise your hand. Okay, so most everyone. If you practice asana like you practice it for an hour today, for 10 minutes tomorrow, you skip 4 days, you practice it for 8 hours the day after that, does it work that way? Better that you do 20 minutes every day, even 10 minutes every day, right? Patanjali says regarding practice that if it's done with the right devotion, if it's done uninterrupted, meaning regularly, and if it's done over the course of a long time, then the practice becomes firmly rooted, right? So this hearing, this is essential to yoga and really essential. It's the first practice mentioned in Bhakti Yoga, Shravanam, hearing. You don't do it occasionally. You do it nityam bhagavata sevya. You do it every day. You spend that time. Even if it's just 10 minutes, if you can read Bhagavad Gita every day, it will change your life. It will strengthen your intellect, and it'll load your intellect with the right kind of knowledge, the knowledge that'll set you free, right? Nityam Bhagavata Sevya, so important, this daily hearing, this daily Shravana. Without that, we think we're free, and we're entirely bound. We have about 4 minutes. Yes.
Enlightened.
Yes, you have a question, please.
We've been talking about it for quite some time now.
Yes.
Every day I happen to remind you about your experiences with people who
Yes.
are enlightened. So if you can share that for a moment.
It would take too long to tell. Vishal, you're just going to have to keep coming back. I'm going to share that story.
I'll be glad to come back. again
Okay,
and
but
again.
there's
you.
not enough time to share it right now. Thank you for trying again, though. On the first day, I said I've known people who've achieved a state of awareness that the Bhagavad Gita was describing. I said I have maybe a story or two I could share. I will share that. I just don't have enough time right now. Thank you. Any other questions? Thoughts? Anyone would like to share? Yes, Andre. We got 3 minutes.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You said that by losing the identification to the mind and the false ego, we get free. Does that mean that the impressions are gone, that the bad emotions are gone, or that we just are able to bypass them?
It's not even necessarily bypassing them, and they're not gone, but they're working for us now. If the manas begins to understand that happiness lies in getting out of the bed, happiness lies in having a simple diet, happiness lies in reading Bhagavad Gita, when it becomes programmed that way, then you spontaneously move in freedom. In bhakti, there are 2 stages. One is called Vaidhi Bhakti, and the other is called Raga Bhakti. The first one is you follow the path because the regulations have been set that way and you know that they're good for you. The other is that you're following the path because you love it, right? And so what's in between is the programming in the mind understanding that happiness doesn't lie on the material side, but it lies in bhakti, right? Then when the mind is programmed in such a way where it's harmonious with the nature of the self, then there's a union between the mind and the self. And what's another word for union?
Yoga.
Yoga, right? That's bhakti yoga. Now my mind isn't full of all kind of false and confusing impressions. It understands by nature, I love God. And it follows that naturally, spontaneously. Impressions and all that, all the memories are still there, but you see them all. When they arise, they all arise within that context. Thank you all so very much. It was a joy spending this time with you. If people would like to join the WhatsApp group to get connected to all the previous classes and all the future classes, as well as a bunch of other classes, Gabriella will be standing outside that door. She's right here, and she will be right there. I ask you, please don't ask me questions now because I need to get off the stage quickly so that they can get going. But please speak to Gabby. Thank you so much. Hope to see you tomorrow and this evening for Q&A, and maybe we'll have Yogi True speak a bit tonight about mental hygiene. Thank you. Hari Om Tat Sat.